Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video to discuss. In today's video, we're discussing some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, some waiver updates from our past couple of days, plus some trade rumors involving the Leafs, the Canadiens, the Islanders, the Blue Jackets, and the Seattle Kraken. We'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you all for your support. We're able to all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so we can all discuss today's video. So in today's video, as usual, we're going to start today's video off by looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some interesting ones from over the past few days since we last talked about this. First, we saw Nashville Predators sign an extension with one of their younger players in their AHL affiliates, and that's Ozzy Weisblatt. Weisblatt, who was a first-round pick of the San Jose Sharks, was traded to Nashville last offseason in a prospect swap with the Preds that sent San Jose Igor Afanaseyev. That was an decent move there. Weisblatt's had a pretty good start to his AHL career in Nashville. He signs a 2-year league minimum deal as an extension in Nashville, so it's pretty good for the Preds. I think eventually he could be a solid bottom six. So far this year, had 3 assists in 8 AHL games after having 17 and 40 AHL games last year. So he's looked pretty good in the AHL. I think eventually he could be a solid NHL player. So 2 years of league minimum, not too much of a risk there for the Predators, and if it doesn't work out over the well in the NHL, he can still play in the AHL. So an interesting pickup there for the Preds to sign Weisblatt. Then we saw Boston Bruins sign one of the pending UFAs. That was in training camp on a PTO, and that was Tyler Johnson. Johnson went to training camp on a PTO with Boston, and it's taken them a while, but he finally signs with the Boston Bruins. Signs a 1-year league minimum deal for the rest of this current season. That's a pretty good pickup there for the Bruins. Johnson last year had 17 goals and 31 points in 67 games with the Blackhawks after having 32 the year prior in 56 games. So Johnson's a pretty good player. He's a versatile middle six forward, can really work out well. Probably will play in the bottom six with Boston. So far this year has no points in 1 game so far with the Boston Bruins. So it's a pretty good pickup there for the Bruins to get Tyler Johnson under contract, and hopefully he'll work out very well for the Boston Bruins. So it's a pretty good pickup there for the Bruins. Then we saw the Florida Panthers sign an ELC to one of their young prospects, and that was Grayson Sachin. Sachin, who was a 2nd round pick in the 2023 draft, 63rd overall, gets a 3-year ELC with AV of $80,000 that began at the start of next year. Sachin's been a really good prospect over in the WHL so far this year. Has 8 goals and 20 points in 12 games for the WHL Edmonton team. So that's a pretty good pickup there for the Panthers. He's a center prospect. He eventually could be a solid 2nd, 3rd line center there for the Panthers. So pretty good sign there for Florida to get Sachin under contract. And lastly, we saw the Boston Bruins sign another player to an ELC, and that was 2024 6th round pick Loic Johansson. Johansson, who's a solid deep prospect there for the Boston Bruins, gets a 3-year ELC with AV of $860,000 that began at the start of next year. Pretty good pickup there for the Boston Bruins, as Johansson, who's been playing over in the QMJHL this year, has a goal and 5 points in 15 QMJHL games. Looks like eventually could be a solid maybe 6th, 7th defenseman there for the Boston Bruins. So pretty good pickup there for Boston as they sign one of their late round picks from last year's draft to an ELC. So those are all signs from our past couple of days, as Boston signed one of their prospects to an ELC, Florida signed Sachin to an ELC, and then Boston finally signs Johnson off his PTO and gets him a contract for the rest of the year, and Weisblatt signs the extension in Nashville. So interesting note there. For those who are signings from our past couple of days, going over to a quick injury update from over the past few days. We've seen a lot of injury updates from over the past few days, so we'll get to all of them here. First, Mike Riley and Alex Romanov are both day-to-day with upper body injuries for New York Islanders. So bad blow as 2 of their top 6 defenders have been injured for the New York Islanders. So hopefully they return not just in the future, but that's definitely a major blow to the Islanders blue line. We saw Elliotte Friedman be activated off of IR after missing 12 games due to a shoulder surgery that he had in the offseason, and he got back into game action. So really good news there for the Avalanche to have Lehkonen back. While Gourde is nearing a return from his upper body injury, and Nichushkin, while still suspended, has started to practice. So some really good stuff there for the Avalanche. While Miles Wood has been moved to IR with his upper body injury, but will be eligible to return in the not-too-distant future. So good stuff there for the Avalanche. We saw Nathan Bastian be out week to week with a jaw injury, so a bad blow there for the Devils to lose bottom 6 forward. Philip Broberg had a horrible leg injury. He's going to be out the next 4 to 6 weeks with lower body injuries, so bad blow there for the Blues to lose a solid top 4 defenseman in Broberg for the next couple of weeks, potentially a month or two. So bad blow there for St. Louis. Keeping with St. Louis, Kasperi Kapanen is nearing a return from his upper body injury, could return in the not-too-distant future. future, so good news there for St. Louis. Artem Zub is nearing a return from his concussion, as well as Shane Pinto's nearing a return from his undisclosed injury. Could return in the next game or two for the Senators, so a top 4 defenseman in their third line center being returning and not just in the future could be extremely good news there for the Senators. Zach Benson was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action for Buffalo, so that's also really good news. Patrick Laine should also return sometime next month, in the month of December, from his injury. He's still training towards a December return at some point, so very good news there for the Habs. They should be able to get their solid offseason acquisition at some point next month. Then we also saw Thatcher Demko practicing a little bit more and could be returning in the not just in future, maybe in the next week or two, so that could be a really good boost there for the Vancouver Canucks. Sam Ersson is out day-to-day with a lower body injury, so that's a bad blow there for Flyers, as they lose their solid starter there in net for the next couple of games. Ryan Poehling is out with a minor injury and personal matters and will miss the next at least 3 games and has been placed on injury reserve, so a bad blow there for the Flyers. Brayden Point was out day-to-day with a lower body injury, although he shouldn't be out for an overly long period of time. Matthews is out day-to-day with an upper body injury, but still, same thing. Shouldn't be out for an overly long period of time, and he's just going to miss the next couple of games. So interesting note there for Point and Matthews. Jacqueline Celebrini and Tyler Dellandrea were both activated off of injury reserve after missing time. Celebrini with a lower body injury, Dellandrea with a hand injury, so good to see those guys get back. And they both returned to game action. Celebrini for the first time since game 1, Dellandrea for the first time in a week, so good to see both those guys get back. Dakota Joshua could be activated off of IR in the next week or two, potentially as early as this upcoming weekend for the Canucks, so that could be really good news there to get Joshua back and not just in future. Samsonov in Vegas will be out for at least a week with the injury, so bad blow there as Vegas loses their backup. Harold Singh is going to be out for a short-term period of time with a lower body injury, so bad blow there as the Stars lose a top-end player. Mason Marchman's out day-to-day with an undisclosed injury. He should hopefully return not just in the future. That shouldn't be a too long of an injury for him. Matt Roy was activated off of IR and got back into game action for the Capitals after missing quite a few games with an injury, so good news there for the Caps. They got Roy back, and Connor McDavid got back into game action last night against the Vegas Golden Knights, so that was really good news there for the Oilers to get McDavid back ahead of schedule, so he didn't miss too much time and he was ahead of the 2-week time frame that he was given, so good news there for the Oilers. But definitely some interesting updates there from the injury updates. Good to see guys like Benson be back. Good to see a guy like Lehkonen be back. That's a massive improvement there for the Avalanche. Celebrini, good to see him be back. Hopefully in not just the future, Pinto can be back, and Zub and Joshua and Demko, so hopefully those guys are also back and not just in future. But bad news to see guys like Marchand be out, Point, Matthews, Broberg, a couple of other guys, so bad news there, and hopefully those guys will recover from their injury and get back and not just in future. Next, going over to a couple of waiver updates from the past couple days. When we did our last trade rumor video, there were no waiver updates, so back over on Saturday we saw Nils Aman be placed on waivers by the Vancouver Canucks. I thought there was a potentiality he could be claimed. He's a solid 4th line center, so I thought there could be a team or two out there who took a chance on him, but Sunday came around and he wound up clearing, so Canucks sent Aman down to his AHL affiliate, and I think that was the roster spot that they needed to make in order to activate Dakota Joshua, so now they have enough space, I think, to activate Joshua, so that's very fantastic news there for the Canucks, as the Aman move was to make room for Joshua. But also good to see Aman remain in the Canucks organization, and it should be a solid call-up option and not just in future. And on Tuesday we saw Max Jones be placed on waivers by Boston Bruins. Thought there might have been an outside chance someone could claim him. He's on a short-term 1-year deal, I think it was, and not too much of a cap hit, and he's a solid bomb 6 forward, so I thought there might have been a team or two out there who might take a chance on him, but he does clear, so not too surprised there. And on Wednesday we saw him be cleared, and then on Wednesday we saw Lucas Carlsson be placed on waivers. He started the season on season opening injury reserve, so he was activated. Sharks needed to move someone down, so they moved him down. With him coming off of injury and being more of an AHLer at this point in time, not too surprised that he wound up not being claimed, as he did wind up clearing earlier today, so good news there for Carlsson as he wound up getting back into game action, and he should be able to play in the AHL and be a call-up option, but not too surprised there that he wound up clearing waivers. So interesting note there, but Nils Aman in Vancouver, Max Jones in Boston, and Lucas Carlsson sounds they were all placed on waivers and have all cleared waivers, so just a note there. But that's all the waiver updates from the past couple of days. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. Now when it comes to trade rumors, we have a handful of things to talk about here. There's going to be some more trade rumor videos coming out hopefully over the next couple of days, but in this video we've got 5 things to talk about. So first, we talked about last week, I did a separate video on this, but Matthew Benning as well as a couple of draft picks were moved to Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for the San Jose Sharks acquiring Timothy Liljegren. It was an interesting move. At the time I thought this would be a decent swap there, as Liljegren is a little bit more of an expensive defenseman, but he's a younger guy who I think could really fit on the Sharks blue line, while Benning is a little bit more older, but he's also cheaper, more experienced, and I thought could really work well on the third pair? Well, there's been a lot of reports to come out saying that Benning's time in Toronto may be limited, as a lot of people do think that Matthew Benning will be flipped by the Toronto Maple Leafs at some point, and the Leafs really want to do right by Benning. So it seems like Benning, even though he's a solid defender on the Leafs depth chart, is probably just like Lehkonen, a 7th or 8th defenseman. He's still got this year plus next year left at a $1.25 million cap hit, and if he's not going to get very much NHL action with the Leafs already having such a really deep blue line, then the Leafs might want to try and do right by him and try and get him a fresh start to get him some more playing time elsewhere. So for teams who are in need of some blue line help, I think there could be some options out there for the Leafs. If they could at least get him into a couple of games, have him play maybe like a third pair role, and he's an offensive defenseman, so put him in places where he can get some points, drive up his value. I think that could be a really good option there for the Leafs. If they could try and flip him for maybe like a 3rd or 4th round pick, or maybe try and move him in a package to get something big, or at least try and flip him to a team for maybe like a bottom 6 forward because they do need some forward help, I think that could be an option there for the Leafs. So don't expect Matthew Benning to remain in Toronto long term. It seems like he will be moved at some point, and that his time in Toronto will be limited. So interesting note there. I thought he would have probably stayed, but it sounds like the Leafs value him lower on the depth charts than they thought, and he will probably find his way to another team in the not distant future. So keep your eye on Matthew Benning, as there's a very likely chance he will get moved at some point in the not distant future. Next, going over to New York Islanders. For them, we know they have a lot of injuries on their forward group right now, with guys like Barzal and Duclair out for a month and a half, maybe 2 months. But there was a piece of news put out there by Elliotte Friedman, I think on the Saturday Night Headlines last week, and he said that the Islanders are currently in the market for a depth defenseman. Now, I've seen a couple of other people who said after that, saying that the Islanders will probably try and do something that like they did last year, when I think it was in November or December, they traded with St. Louis and moved the 7th round pick for Robert Bertuzzo. So something small like that for a serviceable guy who can be a 6th, 7th defenseman, especially with guys like Riley and Romanov out with injuries right now. So that could be a really good option there for the Islanders. Now, Stefan Rosner of the Hockey News and Arthur Staple of The Athletic were both talking about the Islanders and their defensive situation, and looked at some players who might be fits there for the Islanders to try and get. And a couple of guys who they linked would be one, Eric Brandstrom in Vancouver, Eric Gustafsson in Detroit, Cam Fowler in Anaheim, both John Merrill and Declan Chisholm in Minnesota, as well as Scott Perunovich in St. Louis and Brendan Smith in Dallas. Now, some of these make more sense than others. Like Fowler would be a massive upgrade and take a lot of assets from the Islanders, and that's not something I'm sure they really want to do right now. They're looking for more of a depth option. Brandstrom would probably cost them like a 6th or 7th round pick. Gustafsson, probably same thing, 5th or 6th round pick, something around there. If they're looking for a guy like Chisholm or Merrill, they'll probably only get like a 5th or 6th round pick as well. If you're looking at Perunovich, probably a little bit more, given the fact he's a little bit of a younger defenseman, but still probably only like a 4th or 5th round pick. If they're looking at a guy like Brendan Smith, once again, probably like a 6th or 7th round pick. So some of these guys make more sense than the others. Like Perunovich would probably be costing a little more because he's younger, but you also have like Smith has, I think, a year or two on his deal. Brandstrom, I think, is in the final year of his deal. Gustafsson, I think, is in the final year of his deal. On top of that, Chisholm, Merrill, I don't think they have too much term left on their deal too. So those could be some really good stopgap options for the Islanders. There's probably a couple of other guys out there. So we'll have to wait and see, but the Islanders are looking for an inexpensive and cheaper option on the blue line that won't cost a whole bunch, that could really help them overcome their injury troubles right now and sort of help them on the third pair. So look for them to try and target defensemen, not just in future. Another thing to talk about is Jake Evans in Montreal. According to Anthony D'Amico, he was talking about and said that at least 3 teams have called in and checked on Jake Evans from Montreal. Now, we talked about Dvorak and Armia as being the main guys who could be dealt this year by the Montreal Canadiens, but Evans is another one. Evans has $1.7 million on his cap hit for the rest of this year. Then he's going to be UFA at the end of the year. He's a solid guy who can be a 3rd or 4th line center and can really help a team in their depth down the middle. So I could see why some teams would have some interest in Evans. Not exactly sure who would try and be targeting Evans at this point in time, but I could see why some teams would be checking in on him. I think the Canadiens could get like a 4th or 3rd round pick for Evans. I think he's young enough, and I think he's decent enough as like a 4th or 3rd line center. They could get a decent return for Evans. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but according to D'Amico, he says that Evans is on the radar of some teams and could be a player who winds up being dealt in the not distant future, so we'll have to check on that. And lastly, going over to 2 things that were mentioned by Frank Seravalli recently. Now, first, talking to the Columbus Blue Jackets, he says that Don Waddell is open to acquiring teams bad contracts. And we know there's been teams over the past couple of years have done this. It was Arizona for the longest time. The Blackhawks have done it. The Sabres have done it. There have been a couple of other teams too. Now, we talked about the Jackets just before the training camp started, just after their Johnny Gaudreau passing, that the Jackets have a lot of free cap space. So they're hovering right around the cap floor right now. So they have close to, I think, $20 million in cap space. So there's a very likely chance they could do a lot of things if they wanted to. Now, according to Frank Seravalli, most of the things that have been presented to Don Waddell are with players in the terms of 3 to 5 years. And he says that Waddell really wants to pick someone up with maybe 1 or 2 years, because the Jackets are probably going to be a bad team for the next couple of years, but eventually they will start becoming a better team. They have a really good young core there. So Waddell really doesn't want to take on anything that's really long-term in nature. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but according to Frank Seravalli, Waddell is open to acquiring bad contracts with at least shorter-term deals. So for teams right up against the cap who really want some more cap flexibility, they should check in on Columbus. And as long as the term isn't too long, the Jackets may be willing to make something work as long as they are able to acquire an asset as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, Frank Seravalli also mentioned, when he was talking about the Seattle Kraken, he said that the Kraken have way too many forwards at the current time. They have a really deep forward group right now, and in the not just the future, something's going to have to give, because they just have way too many forwards. And with Vince Dunn coming off of long-term injury reserve in the not just in future, he's eligible to be activated, I think it's sometime next week. Then they're going to have to free up cap space to try and activate him off of long-term injury reserve, unless they have to consider moving some players down on waivers. Now, 2 names who Seravalli mentions as potential trade candidates are 1, Yanni Gourde, and 2, Brandon Tanev. Now, both those guys are in the final year of their deals. Gourde's making $5.1 million. Tanev, I think, is making $3.5 million. Tanev's a fantastic bomb 6 forward, plays that role really well. He's also a very good team player. He's a guy who seems to be really great to be around, so that could be a really good addition for a lot of teams who could really use some bomb 6 help. Gourde's more of a middle 6 forward. He's a little bit more expensive. He's currently stuck on the 4th line in Seattle with how much depth they have right now, but he's, like I said, a middle 6 forward. He was on that 3rd line when Tampa was winning cups. He's a really good player. His production has gone down since he arrived in Seattle, but he's still a really good forward, and I think a lot of teams could covet him really much. And Seravalli also said that while teams have checked in on Gourde, Seattle said they're not really willing to move him at this point in time. But if Dunn gets back and they really need to free up some cap space, that might be an option there for the Kraken. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But according to Seravalli, Gourde and Tanev might be 2 options that the Kraken may move in the next couple of weeks to free up some cap space. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's what we're talking for today. Let's hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Kraken? Does Gourde or Tanev get moved in Seattle to free up cap space? Do the Jackets acquire some bad contracts to help other teams? Do the Islanders acquire defensemen? If so, what sort of low-end defenseman could they try and target? Could Jake Evans be moved by Montreal Canadiens? And if so, what sort of teams could try and acquire him? And could Matthew Benning be moved by Toronto? And if so, what sort of teams could acquire him? Definitely have to get your thoughts on all of that. Plus the signings, waiver updates, and injury updates from the past couple of days. Definitely have to get your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk for today. So this video, if you're looking to subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support. We're now to without you guys. So if you haven't already, definitely subscribe button down below. Definitely leave a comment down in the comment section below. So you can also today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. The link down in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.